And here we go. All right, see you. Okay, so when I call your name, just raise your hand. I'm going to move you into your groups in a couple of minutes. And I see Angela. I know she's working. I'll call your name first. Okay, yeah, she's able to function now. Okay, Melia. Okay, good. I understand how to do that. Okay, let me see. I see you. What we're doing, Francisco and Chanel, is we're practicing raising your hands, and you all are going to meet your teams today. For just a few minutes, your first team. There's more than one team. So when I call your name, you're raising your hand. So Chanel. Yes, thank you very much. And this is just a tech exercise. We're seeing Crystal and I on the same line. Okay, excellent. Okay, so Francisco, Cisco, and Crystal, let me see you just raise your hand. No, it seems a little monotonous, but when we start moving forward, okay, excellent. I love it. Okay, I see that is Miss Sandra. Okay, excellent. Everybody knows how to raise their hand. So everyone is here that's going to be here. I appreciate you being on time. I apologize for those of you that got locked out last week or whenever that was, last month, whenever that was, we last met. As I mentioned, this is a beta group. We are a hybrid, so we're practicing a virtual delivery as well as in-person deliveries. Part of that practice involved me locking y'all out. I wasn't trying to lock you out, but that's what happened. So now there's enough of you here. I have people here that are enough for 2 of the teams are here. So let me tell you what the assignment is. And as people come in, I'll add them to the room, to their team. Okay, so so we're practicing time management and you're introducing yourselves, even if you already know each other. What you're going to do is you're going to give your name. Okay, you're going to do 3 things. You're going to say one thing that you were reminded of, because you remember we trained here that I'm not teaching you anything. I'm reminding you of things that we just have forgotten over time. What things at least one thing that you've been reminded of or that you've been able to build on from either any of the 3 previous speakers or your journal. And then the third thing that you'll do for those who are here, and if you don't feel there's enough people to represent being able to make this choice, just that'll be your answer when you reconvene. But you're going to choose someone to be a scribe for this team. These are your calendula cohort teams. And so that person, when I say a scribe, this is someone that needs to be able to maneuver a Google shared document for the group and be able to maneuver the Jamboard. Okay. Make sure I have y'all the right numbers. Okay, I don't have the right numbers. Let me move. Okay, so here we go. Let me move you all here, here, and here. Okay. All right, Alexa, glad to see you. Let me get her into her. I'm going to hold you here, Diana, Alexis, because your other team members are not here. Okay, I'm going to open the rooms. So there should be at least one person that's in these 2 team 1 is going to be, you'll see who your team members are when you get in there, team 2, right? So you're giving your name. You're saying one thing that you were reminded of or that you've been able to build on from either your journal or any one of the 3 speakers, and you're choosing a scribe. It doesn't even have to be one scribe. You all can make a decision to rotate the scribing, but there should be someone on the team that's choosing to be responsible for do the scribing. I'm going to open the rooms and you will have about 10 minutes to work on that. Appreciate y'all going through this exercise with us. Okay, Alexis, you are in team number 3. And your team members, say Kevin is absent today, you're going to be with the Bliss group. Okay, and if you remember that the Bliss group are those of you who are in the program, but not necessarily striving to make it this super academic experience, right? So you are, coming to the Guard more for mental health therapy, the fellowship, as well as getting the learning information. I see Ms. Gloria.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
mean, Miss Sandra. I don't know how to, can I move you to the room? You're already in there. I don't know how to help you join the room, babe. I think they're all in the same house though, so we're probably good for team 2. All right, so I was saying with you, Alexis, so I was just confirming that. So now your team members are going to be Sherry, Janice, Kevin, Jocelyn, and Dominique. Okay, so you've met, I don't remember if you met Janice, but I know you've met Kevin and you've met, I don't remember if you met Jocelyn and Dominique, but they were all at the Rebel Marketplace. Did you remember meeting them?
Yes, ma'am. I think I met Jocelyn. I'm not sure about Kevin.
Okay, okay. I know for sure you met Jocelyn. That's right, because she's fitting new. Okay, so we'll just hang out for a minute. Hey, Diana, how you doing? I appreciate you being patient with me while they do these exercises. We have to practice so we can move smoothly because next week is on. I want to have them feel comfortable, joining the rooms and coming in and out and completing their exercises. All right. So
yeah, no problem. Hey, Sister Ote,
okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please do.
Can you remind me, please, how much time I have on the agenda today?
Yes, I have you set for 30 minutes.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, I have you going. Yeah, so let me hurry up and get them. So they're supposed to go in here till 1:45, but since it's just a few of them, we will, not hold them in there that long. So the purpose of these groups, I'll say for Alexis and for the purpose of the recording, is to introduce I set up these teams based on different criteria. Two of the teams have a person that does not live in the state of Colorado. They're more experienced gardeners, backyard gardeners. We also have on one team, team 1 has more experienced gardeners. They actually were part of the beta group with me last season. So I put them all together in the group just because they have those things that are in common. And then on team 2, we have what am I going to call this team? I think they're going to come up with the team, but it's Crystal and her mother, her aunt, and her partner, and Miss Chanel make up that team. And I put them together. Chanel is a new gardener, and there's also Morgan who will be joining them, who is an experienced gardener. I put them together primarily because 4 of them are all growing at the same growth site, which is like super exciting for me. So that they can work on that together. Chanel will be managing a plot at the Montview Park Community Garden. And so she will be just, going, they all have the same types of assignments. She'll just be on that team to be in fellowship with that group. And then the Bliss group, I already told you who they were, and who, how they function. We have on Tuesdays, right now we have a therapy Tuesday for the Bliss group. And that just means that it's a time when I do not have volunteers in the garden at Montview Park Community Garden, and the people that are in the beta group come. A lot of the beta group members have plots at Montview, so they work on their plots. We play our music, we have our little snacks, and I kind of give them coaching if they ask for it, but we're basically just out there kind of chilling out. There's a lot of water running at the creek right now, so that's pretty therapeutic. And that's basically what's happened with the Bliss group. The only assignment that your group will have, Alexis, would be to think about another date or another day in the week or an evening that you all might want to meet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's what we have on that. So let me send them a message and say, in 3 minutes. They're going to come back and they're going to report out for 5 minutes max, because this is a time management exercise, right? And then I will introduce you, Diana, Mrs. Denwood. Just so happy to know you. I'm so happy that you're here. Just don't know how thrilled I am. I guess you do know because I'm telling you now. And then the topic was water conservation for the backyard gardener, which is be in particular for team number 2, because that's exactly who they are. We are doing some conservation things at Montview with some straw that they'll see when they come back into the garden on Tuesday. It always looks different every time they come. Somebody's talking at the chat. You can say, oh, that was okay. All right. Let's give them a couple more minutes. Let's see. What else can I tell you, Alexis? Have you had opportunity to go through your journal yet, Miss Alexis?
No, ma'am, this week has been a little crazy, but I said after this, I was definitely gonna go through it because I have time today.
Okay, good. Appreciate that honesty. It's just a support. It's not, as you all know, this is a volunteer activity. And I'm just trying to, the journal is just really to support you, as we go through the process. It's not like going to give you every answer to every question. That's what I'm for. Well, I don't have every answer to every question, but for some of the questions that are not in the answers that are not in the journal, I can help you with that.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm getting a lot of compliments on my hair, by the way.
As you should. It's lovely.
She's my loctician, my hairdresser. What do they call them in 2023? See, hairstylist. Do people still say that?
Yes, ma'am.
I used to be in a beauty salon every 2 weeks back in the day. Diana, are you going to need to, I gave you co-host, so if you need to share your screen, you'll be able to do that. Okay, let me bring them back. We will have them report out. Takes about a minute to close the room. I forgot that. Here they come. There she is. I think the first time I met you, you came to Hinckley High School's garden. I feel like that's the first time I met you in person. You remember
Yeah,
that?
I think I did a little conservation talk at Hinckley, and I remember seeing you working in one of your plots and
Yeah.
coming up and saying hi, but is that the first time? I don't
It
know.
was, I don't know. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
I
I'm
don't know.
so glad that everyone is back. Hey, we get to
Hey.
see Diana's face. So this is what we're gonna do now. We're gonna just take the next 4 minutes. Okay, we had 2 teams that were able to convene. Alexis team, the Bliss group team. She was the only member today, so I just shared with her some things around the Bliss group and I gave her group an assignment that will be in the recording. And so now I'd like to hear from group 1. I forgot to tell you what to report back, and I apologize for that. I just want to hear your scribe, whomever you chose to be the scribe. If it's more than one person, you can rotate that assignment, but just tell us the name of the person, the people in your group, and that one thing that they shared, please. Or tell me who the scribe is, and then report out, please. Thank you. That'll be group team 1 can go first. It's Angela and Malia today.
Okay, yeah, I was like, I don't know which
Yeah,
group I'm in.
yeah, you're team 1.
Okay, so I'll be the scribe,
Okay.
and the things that we talked about, Angela talked about learning more about companion planting and pest control, or being reminded of those things. Similarly, I said pest control and being able to identify pests and disease.
Those are good ones, really important ones, huh? Appreciate you. Thank you for that. Team two. So team one, let me tell you who else is on your team. So your team is Shelly, Rachel, Angela, Malia, RG Green, and Amy. And so there'll be more information on how you all will connect and what's the purpose of the teams and all that as we move forward. Just wanted you to practice, raising the hand, getting into the rooms and coming back today was the purpose of that. Team two, we have Chanel, Morgan, who's absent today. We have Francisco, we have Crystal, Gloria, and Sandra. And so thank you. The report out is who is your scribe, and then the name and what that thing is that person remembered or would learn from the speakers. Thank you.
So I'm the scribe. In my group is Cisco and Crystal, and basically they were sharing with me that they they shared a lot. So I'm trying to remember it all. Well, they are boyfriend and girlfriend, and their family, like their aunt, other people, but they're in the better group together. They also shared with me that I think it's just Crystal is a part of the steering committee with food justice, and she knows some work with food justice. And there's a previous speaker who was talking about how it's therapeutic to garden, I guess. I think I forgot. But also she told me that they planted beds at their house, I believe. And yeah, I think I got the gist of it. I'm sorry.
Good job, Chanel.
Oh, Sister Ote, you're muted.
I was being grateful and appreciating you all allowing Chanel that opportunity. I know she raised her hand if you all chose her, but I appreciate that you allowed her to be the scribe. Chanel has raised her hand to be a member. She mentioned is Food Justice Northwest Aurora, of which Crystal Murillo is a steering committee member. I'm a steering committee member, and Chanel has raised her hand to be one of the new incoming steering committee members. So thank you very much for that report out. I won't put Alexis on the spot since it was just the two of us, but I will explain for the Bliss group briefly. I think I said this already. I'll say it again, is that they are the individuals who meet on Tuesdays right now. They do have an assignment for those of you who are on other teams who are also part of the Bliss group, right? It means you're coming in on Tuesdays. You would also get this information and have an opportunity to input on one other day during the week and one evening, if you all would like to have that opportunity to come into the yard. And so this is for all of you who are under the sound of my voice and will be when we have the recording. Okay, so now I'm a minute over. I'm not doing bad. So we're ready to go forward. I'm very excited. So, we have a lot of information that has gone forward since March, and a lot more information that's going to happen between now and the end of September. Today, we have Mrs. Diana Denwood, and I'm going to get this. She is the water conservation supervisor for the city of Aurora Water. That's what's in your email, to get that right. All right, excellent. And so she supports, let me say this, hurry up, Ote. She specifically knows Montview Park Community Garden. As a matter of fact, that award that we won for most improved comes from the group that don't you facilitate that awards team?
Yeah, the Aurora Community Garden Network.
Okay, so they know, they're familiar with that. Okay, so the Aurora Community Garden Network, the Montview gardeners are invited to be a part of that network, and I'm sure any other gardeners. I'm just inviting people to your committee, right? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
We want to see more people.
That's what I felt like. That was kind of the energy I felt when I go to. It's very informative. You learn a lot of things. I'm going to stop talking now and allow Diana to go forward so that she can have the full time that she needs to talk to us. I hope that you all had opportunity to read the article that I shared with you and to have an opportunity to look at the video that we saw from Epic Garden.
Oops, Sister Ote, you got muted again.
All of that information will be repeated when I send your chat notes. Okay, I'm stopping now. All right, go right ahead.
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for having me today. Sister Ote, thanks for inviting me. This information is going to be relevant for everybody, though I will talk about Aurora in particular. It sounds like not everyone is in Aurora, or maybe I think mentioned that not everyone is even in the state. So some of this information will not be relevant to you, but I did want to talk about very briefly the drought declaration for Aurora. So we'll get into that. I am going to share my PowerPoint presentation. Am I able to share? Hey, I'm not sure if I'm able. Oh, I am able to share. Sorry about that. Even after doing this for 3 years, still not perfect at it. But anyway, so here is my presentation. And I would just say, in interest of time, if you have questions, let's go ahead and open it up to questions at the end of the presentation. And sorry, hold on just a second. There we go. So this is basically Conservation 101 for home gardeners. We're going to talk about Colorado, our environment, and why water conservation, of course, is important. And then we'll go into the things that gardeners can do to conserve water in your gardens. And many of you probably have experience with at least some of these things. I have a couple of gardens I just planted up, for better or for worse, yesterday, but hopefully we don't get any more hailstorms. But anyway, so I use a lot of these myself, so I'll be able to talk to you about my personal experiences with this as well. So generally speaking, Colorado, and particularly the Front Range of Colorado, where we're at here in Aurora, is a semi-arid environment. We receive on average only 15 inches of precip a year, precipitation. So that's rain or snow or hail or whatever. You can see on this very general map. It's a little outdated, but still totally relevant. This is not Tennessee. This is not Illinois. We are a dry, semi-arid climate. You can see we're mostly oranges and reds on the map. And 15 inches on the scale is on the low end of the average precipitation annually that we receive across the United States. We are only 2 inches away from being considered a desert environment. So a desert environment, the definition is 13 inches or less, and we are approximately at 15. Now, so far we've been having an amazing spring. I'm sure you're all grateful as I am for all of this this great weather that we've been having, although I could do with less hail. I'm sure we all could. Where do we get our water from? We do not rely on water that falls in Aurora for our full water supplies. The vast majority of the water that comes to our faucets comes from the mountains. Aurora, the city of Aurora specifically, has 12 reservoirs, only 2 of which are here in Aurora. That would be Quincy and Aurora Reservoir. We don't have any water in Cherry Creek Reservoir, if you're familiar with the state park and the big reservoir there. All the rest of them, all 10 of the others, are up in the mountains where we get the most snow and rainfall. But it is snow that we rely on, and snow melt in particular, which is just starting to happen about now. The peak of snow melt is in June. So we are very carefully watching how much water goes into our reservoirs this year because we've declared drought, but I'll talk about that more in a second. So we do not rely on our water that falls here in Aurora. The takeaway is we get our water from the mountains, and it comes to Aurora through a series of rivers, pipes, other water channels. So there's a really large infrastructure when we're talking about our water system. It stretches as far as 180 miles away. That's the farthest reservoir. That's Homestake, which is northwest of Aspen. So there are 7 major river basins in the state of Colorado. And and when I say we, I mean Aurora captures water from 3 of them. We get 50% of our water resource from the South Platte River Basin, 25% from the Arkansas Basin, and 25% from the Colorado Basin. The Colorado River has been in the news always, but more and more the last decade, and certainly the last few years, because we all talk about or hear about Lake Mead, really reduced water levels in Lake Mead, which is fed entirely by the Colorado River. Here are my arrows. Forgot about the animations. So those are the three river basins: South Platte, Arkansas, and Colorado. Now, who uses the water? 89%, this is according to the Colorado Water Plan that was created in 2015. Actually, the highest water users are in agriculture. 89% of the water used in Colorado goes to agriculture. And then not just, but 7% of the water resources go to cities like Aurora, and 4% is used by industry or commercial users, manufacturers, things like that. But let's talk about us. How much water do you think you use in a day? And you don't have to put it into the chat, just think on it to yourself. You may be surprised to learn that on average in Aurora, each person uses 85 gallons of water per day. That's a lot of gallons. And that's used for everything: showering, cooking, cleaning, all that kind of stuff. 85 gallons of water per day. It is a lot, especially when you think about folks in other countries, even folks who don't have direct access to safe drinking water. We all know about people, typically women and even children, having to go haul water from the closest water source. So you know that 85 gallons a day can be pretty astonishing depending on where you are in the world. So of that 85 gallons, again, that's an average. Most of it is used indoors. Just 60% of it is used indoors, 40% is used out of doors. And this is generally speaking, but compared to the rest of the country, it's pretty good. We have learned that conserving water indoors and outdoors, especially, is very important because of our limited water resources in Colorado. And so in the rest of the country, it's typically a 50-50 split. But because we've had such strong conservation measures, especially along the Front Range, well, everywhere, but especially along the Front Range, I would say, we have reduced our outdoor water use. So actually more of our use is from indoors. And then when we're looking indoors at our water usage, a lot of people are very surprised to learn that it's the toilets that use the most water. It's not your showering, it's not washing your clothes. For the most part, again, this is average, it is the flushing of toilets many times a day. And obviously, if you have more people in your home, there's more flushing happening. If you have older toilets use more water. It wasn't until 1994 that the federal government passed a standard for all toilets to be 1.6 gallons per flush. And before that, it was at least 3.5 gallons per flush. So if you have original toilets, they are using a lot of water. We do have a rebate if you live in the city of Aurora, $100 to replace an older toilet with a 0.8 gallon per flush, which is our new high efficiency standard, because the new Colorado standard is actually 1.28. And that happened, I believe, in 2014, that new standard came out. So anyway, that's how we use our water. And then moving along, so all right, now we have an idea of where our water comes from and how we use our water. So why is conservation important? We need to sustain our water resources. Colorado continues to grow. Aurora continues to increase in population. So everyone needs to pitch in to create a sustainable water use, water environment, water resources in Aurora and elsewhere. Aridification is happening. We'll talk about what aridification is in a moment. Obviously, drought is happening for Aurora right now. Other climate change impacts, and I mentioned population increase. Conservation, of course, will also help reduce your water bills. Reducing waste is a social value. At least I believe it should be a strong social value. And I hope many of you agree with me. And then we also want to reduce drought impacts. And obviously, drought, we're hearing more and more about it in other places as the climate does change over time. Scientists currently believe that those fluctuations will become stronger. So we'll have larger storm events, larger drought, longer drought events, more severe drought events, and things like that, wacky weather. So when we talk about drought, that is more of the way that we talk about it in our common culture is kind of a single event, whereas aridification is a process of climate change over time. So climate scientists are forecasting that our long-term drought that we've been in, it's actually, can we still call it drought? It's not temporary. So a lot of folks are starting to use this word aridification to mean a period of transition where we're going to be transitioning into an increasingly water scarce environment and a more constant arid environment. So we're already semi-arid, so we may be heading into less average precipitation. Okay, let's talk about the Aurora Drought Stage 1. City Council did declare Drought Stage 1 for this year. And you may be wondering, hey, if we're doing great about conservation and we're pushing conservation, I thought one of the benefits was drought resilience. And it is, but unfortunately, our water system, which we're always trying to improve, there's actually a new reservoir that's under planning and actually the start of nearly the start of construction right now, called Wild Horse. We're always trying to expand, but new reservoirs take decades to plan and then build. So we need to use a lot of different strategies to maintain a sustainable water system. But so the reason that Drought Stage 1 was declared, because you can see on this graph, it shows the last 6 years of data, and then we compare to 2002, which is the last time that drought was, or record-breaking drought happened in Colorado, and Drought Stage 2 was declared. Actually, I think we went to Drought Stage 3, but I think the stages may have been different 20 years ago. And so we declared Drought Stage 1 because we have only 50% of storage water in our reservoir. So in our entire storage system, we're only at 54% capacity. And that's a scary number to be at. We typically like to at least be at 75%. The purple line you can see here is 2020, and it's the lowest we've been in these 6 years. And we can compare it to the kind of orangey, dark orangey line, which is 2002. If anyone was here in Colorado in 2002, you remember how strict our water restrictions were. And although we are doing better than 2002, we are mimicking that line, which is the reason why Drought Stage 1 is declared. And what Drought Stage 1 means is that turf grass watering is limited to 2 days a week instead of the normal 3. And there's some confusion about what all the restrictions can affect, and it is lawn watering only. So if you water your lawn by a sprinkler system or by hand, you can only do it 2 days per week. For vegetable gardens, we are not limiting, we're not restricting how often you can water your vegetable gardens. So they are not a part of the restrictions. You can water as needed, but I will stress that it is indeed as needed. So that leads me into what can we do to save water and conserve water in our gardens. So I'm going to cover 4 main topics: building healthy soil, using the proper mulch, watering correctly, and choosing water-wise perennial beds to surround your vegetable gardens. A lot of our community gardens have perennial bed or annual bed space, and I would urge you to consider water-wise perennials instead of water-hungry annuals or other perennials. So the first thing is talking about talking about building your soil. And you may be surprised, but we do like in the conservation world, we like to see these block beds or raised garden block beds versus the traditional farming idea that we all have in our heads of just the rows. And that's because you can create a lot of nutritious, aerated, fluffy soil in the block style gardens, like on the left, as opposed to the row styles where you're constantly walking between the rows. You are compressing the soil, which is not great for your plants. And it also is reducing the total surface area that you're even planting. So it's much more productive to plant things in a block style than in a row style anyway. Nutritious, fluffy soil that you can create in a raised bed or in a block style bed, it is better at holding water. And so the water that you put down in a nutritious aerated area is better absorbed, will not run off, will not evaporate off. It will be retained in the soil better than if you have a lean soil, less nutritious, less aerated. Okay. This is just a really quick image. I love this image. I always have this in my vegetable gardens, showing that our vegetables want to grow deep roots, and they are better able to do that in nutritious, fluffy soil. We were watching the video on tomatoes as we came in, and one of the examples was the guy was planting a tomato just essentially in a grow bag, and that kind of made me groan, because tomato roots can get to be quite an extensive network. They want room to grow. They want that below ground vertical space to grow in, and under laboratory conditions, they can grow as deep as 9 feet, as you see in this image. And a grow bag won't allow that at all. So a healthier tomato, a healthier any kind of plant that has longer roots is one that can access water more deeply and be more resilient to hot and dry spells and not need watering as frequently. One of the best practices that I like to teach is called double digging. It is hard work, but the idea is you only have to do it once. I don't know if y'all have already talked about preparing your garden bed for the first time, or if you haven't done something like this and doing it for the first time this gardening season, this is ideal. The reason why double digging is so nice, which by the way means that you are digging a vertical along the one line, you are as far as your spade can go, you remove that first line of soil to a container or to a tarp, it doesn't matter, off to the side. You mix it with compost, and then you take a garden fork, which is a really scary looking implement that has very large tines, very long tines, and you are using the garden fork to fork into not remove the soil, but essentially aerate the soil underneath in that subsoil layer where there are a lot of micronutrients that help feed your plants. And that's what in my little drawing down there, that's what the vertical lines are. Those are like the garden fork tines going in. And then you go to your next row and you plop that soil mixed in with compost into the first row. And then you keep going, doing that and so on and so forth, the length of your garden bed. And what this does is it's not only rototilling the topsoil, but you're also using that garden fork and accessing and aerating the subsoil layer. And this creates a very fluffy, well amended, the idea is you're adding compost along the way, and nutritious soil that is better at holding water and is more nutritious for your plants. So that's why this is a water conservation practice. Next, we'll talk about mulch. Mulching is critical. I love mulch, and I want you to love mulch too. After your seedlings have come up and they're at least 4 inches tall, that's when you want to apply a quick disintegrating, quickly decomposing type of mulch like straw, grass clippings, leaves from last fall, and also newspaper or cardboard work very, very well as mulch. So some of the benefits include, there's so many. So it, you know, on the most superficial level, it helps keep your garden looking tidy. But then in terms of water conservation, it holds moisture in the soil. It is like a blanket on top of your soil that holds moisture in. It also helps slightly reduce weeds. You know, nothing can completely eliminate weeds. We're always going to get out there and be pulling weeds, but it does help a little bit, especially with weedy ground cover weeds like spurge. It doesn't let soil get to the spurge, and it can really deter spurge. It helps deter pests, and it helps the soil stay a little bit cooler. It deflects some of that sunlight. The sunlight gets to your plant leaves where it needs to be, but not to the soil where it's really heating up that soil. It helps stop erosion. So if you are just keeping your garden bed, just the soil is open to the elements, that soil will start eroding away slowly but surely. And also, as our mulches break down and decompose over time, they're adding nutrients back into the soil. So many benefits. Most important of which I would say in terms of our discussion is water conservation, but it has all those other things. So I wrote precautions here because you do not want to use wood chips as your vegetable garden mulch unless you plan on raking it away, which is really hard to get all of it. Wood mulch decomposes very slowly, and as it decomposes, it pulls nitrogen from your soil. And it's just gardening isn't you know, a perfect art. It's really tough to remove all of the mulch from an area and then rototill in and do whatever you need to do for the fall or for the spring for your bed preparation, and then put the mulch back in. So I'd say it's a much better idea to use something that quickly decomposes than something that decomposes slowly and is robbing your plants of an important macronutrient, which is nitrogen. I already mentioned the types. Newspaper, you might be laughing at me, that's fine. Newspaper, it's not the prettiest mulch, and also it can be a pain to apply because you could just picture yourself on a slightly windy day trying to put down newspaper. But what you can do is have a hose with a nozzle on the end so the hose just isn't running, and almost kind of do a fake paper mache as you go. You put a few layers, at least 3 layers of newspaper down, wet it so it starts to stick together. And then even better, then you can add some leaves or straw or grass clippings on top. Cardboard, I would say it's easier to work with, but then you have to create holes in it for your plants. So personally, I go with last fall's leaves. I've got 2 giant silver maple trees in my backyard. I've got lots of leaves. And so that's what we use at my house. They work really well. You want to apply at least 3 inches, ideally. I know it's not always going to happen. Maybe some areas will be thicker and some areas will be thinner. That's okay. At least you're trying. It's okay not to have the ideal 3 inches, but getting close to there is great. All right, let's talk about watering. I'm not going to go through this. I know I'm trying to be conscientious of the time, and I don't want to run out of time because I do talk a lot. So instead of talking about the amount of watering, people always ask me, like, what's the magic number? How much water do I want to put down a week or a day? And unfortunately, there's not a great answer. You have to check the soil. And don't just look at the top, because all soil will crust on top. It'll look dry, but actually will have a lot of moisture underneath that crust. So what you need to do is put your hands in the soil or get your trowel out, dig down at least an inch and check out how that soil feels and looks an inch down. If it is obviously moist, great. Our soil is probably pretty darn moist lately, even though we've had this beautiful sunny day. You can also, excuse me, pay attention if it is a dark color, if it feels cool to the touch. Generally speaking, that is a soil that is retaining water and it is not drying out, or it is not dried out, and you might not need to water. Okay, so get your hands in the soil and pay attention to it. And that is really the most important thing about, one of the most important things about watering and how to know when to water. I know that in our Denver urban gardens, we are not allowed to use an irrigation system. So many of you, or a few of you, if you're in Montview Park Community Garden, or if you're at home, that's different. But many of us are hose draggers. We don't have an irrigation system hooked up to our vegetable garden. And when I say irrigation system, I mean a drip system, because overhead watering is not good for our plants. So if you're watering by hand with a hose, obviously always use one of these nozzles on the end of your hose for two reasons. One is because the flow rate of the water coming out of the hose is high. It's like 7 or 8 gallons per minute. And if you're leaving your hose on the side, that can waste a lot of water at a time as you're doing something else, going back to your water, doing something else, going back to your watering. So always use this this nozzle that has an automatic shut-off valve on it. If you're not squeezing the handle, it's off. So that is fantastic. The other great thing about the nozzles are it reduces that flow rate, because 8 gallons per minute, no plant can, that's like drinking from a fire hose for us, for those plants. No plant can absorb that much water at a time. Even if you have like the perfect soil, nothing can absorb that much. So you want to slow the flow rate, and you can do that with this nozzle. You also don't want to water from overhead. So it's not a great water conservation practice, because some of that water is evaporating in the air, but you're also getting the entire plant wet, when really it's just the roots that want to be wet. If you're getting the entire plant wet, you're actually starting to create a bit of a humid environment. And then we're talking about diseases potentially, and we're talking about bugs that really enjoy that humid environment. So you are creating something that you don't want to create. So do your best to water at ground level. If, like me, your lower back is a concern, I've got low back issues, get one of those watering wands. Those things are awesome. So you don't actually have to stoop or kneel to position the sprinkler nozzle at the ground. Those wands are awesome. It just gives you like an extra 2.5 feet to work with. Let's talk about flood irrigation for a minute. I don't think this pertains to most of you, but maybe so. Maybe you come from a culture or location where flood irrigation was the norm. And I do, so I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly with flood irrigation. The good, obviously, it can be culturally relevant to some people. We see this in various community gardens across Aurora, where there are so many different kinds of people from different backgrounds, different countries coming together in the same space. It's a beautiful thing. And we always want to be respectful of other people's cultures, and also their foods that they are growing, the different interesting plants that they're growing that you wouldn't necessarily find at a grocery store, a typical American grocery store. And so maybe these folks, all they know is flood irrigation, because that's what they did at their home country. That's how they always have grown their whatever plant. However, in terms of water conservation, it is very inefficient, as you can imagine, because you just have these open channels of water. And so the bad would be that when you have seedlings and you're trying out a flood irrigation method, the seedlings have brand new root systems that are very localized. And typically the flood irrigation, unless it's, penetrating out to the side, which I would imagine that for most of our soils, it's actually mostly going down, though maybe it's the water's moving horizontally through the soil. It might not be getting to those seedling roots. So you do want to water at the root ball. And then the ugly is that you have these open channels of water where water is just free to evaporate. And so you're actually putting a massive amount of water down. And does it actually, do your plant's root systems, can they access that water? Do they need that much water? I would argue that they don't, and there are better, much more efficient methods to use here in Colorado, even if you're just hand watering. But one of the things I really like are drip systems, or a kind of or soaker hoses on the end of your hose, which we'll talk about next. So I'd prefer, if people were going to use something like flood irrigation, you're actually watering, you're creating a berm around each individual plant and then putting the hose there, letting the water fill up, and then those roots, or the water is going directly to the roots exactly where the plant needs the water. So this would be an alternative to a large flooded square. So here's the idea about drip irrigation and watering aids. These can work even if you just have a hose. So this on the left, this is called point source irrigation, where you've got the spaghetti 1/4-inch tubing, we call it spaghetti tubing, coming off of that brown distribution tubing. It's got an emitter like the red one here, and the water is going directly to a single plant. The one on the upper right is an inline drip irrigation system. That means there isn't an individual emitter. There are actually these specialized holes. It's not just a hole, but I won't go into describing it. Every 10 or 12 inches at a pre-specified rate or pre-specified distance along the entire drip line. Or the bottom right is a soaker hose. And that's probably the easiest thing to put together. You don't really have to know how irrigation systems work. You just attach it to the end of your hose. You know what the precipitation rate is, so you can start, connect the hose to the soaker hose, let it run for 20 minutes or half an hour, whatever is needed for your plants in a given day. And then you can go about doing something else like weeding, or maybe helping out Sister Ote clean up, do some weeding around the common areas, or organizing tools or something else. So it can be really helpful if you're in a community garden or at your own home garden to be doubly efficient. So you're being efficient with water and you're being efficient with your time, which is great. All right, moving along. This is my last portion. My last point, I promise, is to consider planting water-wise borders. There are over 400 different plant species on the Aurora Water Conservation plant list of water-wise plants. So there's a huge variety, so much diversity in plant material that doesn't need as much water as Kentucky bluegrass, which kind of sets the standard for water guzzling plants. And then on top of the ones that are water-wise, there's also a subset of wonderful native plants that do double duty. They don't use a lot of water and they help provide habitat and forage for native pollinators, which I'm guessing you've talked about, or if you haven't, you probably will be, because all gardeners are awesome people and want to talk about awesome things like bugs and native bugs and our pollinators, which help us get our fabulous fruits and vegetables. So water-wise borders do the additional benefit beyond being just pretty, but they also attract those pollinators, whether they're non-native honeybees or are awesome pollinators, by the way, of which we have over 800 types of native bees in the state of Colorado. There you go, side fact for you. And yeah, so they can be just as beautiful and attract just as many pollinators as annuals, and you only have to plant them once and you don't have to water them a lot. So there's my plug for water-wise plants. And that's all I had for everyone today. Sister Ote, sorry I went over a little bit on my time. I will stop sharing, and I will just say that I'd be happy to make that PowerPoint into a PDF for everybody if you'd want that as a resource. And I can send that to you, Sister Ote, and you can distribute as if you would like.
That sounds wonderful. I think that they would appreciate that. We do have
Okay.
a lot of digital, sources that they will be able to benefit from that. I appreciate you so much. I do want to
Yeah.
say this. You mentioned Water Wise, and we do have a field trip on August the 12th to go to the Water Wise garden over there, in the Civic
Yay!
Center. Yeah.
Oh, good. Is Amanda
Yeah.
doing that tour for you?
I have not asked her to. It's on a Saturday. I haven't, not that she won't do it on a Saturday, but I haven't asked her yet to do that. I kind of want her to do something else.
No, hey, ask both. Ask her to do
right,
both.
right.
And
How
because
about
we
that?
always have team members there now on Saturdays, because
Oh.
every Saturday is a volunteer day. So we always
Okay.
have someone there, and I bet someone
Okay.
can step away from the volunteers to at least talk to you all for 15 minutes or something at the very least.
That's perfect. I'm gonna make a note
I
of
did
that.
want to say, do we have time for questions?
Yeah, so I will say this. Thank you so much, Diane. I will say this for those of you that need to exit, that you need to go, please feel free, be, guilt free and all that. Go ahead and do your thing. But I would like to receive questions. We won't go for more than another half hour. Okay, so I appreciate that, because I do have some more announcements and things that need to happen as well. The recording will catch it. So if you have to go, please feel free to go, but I'm going to mute, and we're going to practice raising our hands. So you'll notice different presenters do different things, or I guess we'll let Diana lead this as well, because Caitlin was like, raise your hand or put your, or unmute your phone, but we had people that were on telephone. So I'm gonna let Diana lead that. I'm gonna mute, and we're gonna take questions for at least 10 more minutes.
All right, great. Yeah, I'll just do my best to call on people that raise their hand. Don't be shy. It can be about mulch, the water conservation methods I talked about. It could be about Aurora drought, if you have any questions about drought.
I have a question. I'm gonna try to let them go. Here we go.
Hey,
Melita.
so yeah, my question is about, well, in Colorado, we have a lot of clay soil, which I know has like pros and cons, but often it doesn't like absorb moisture, I think, very well.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if you have any suggestions around like what to do if you have clay soil. I did hear you talk about the method of taking the soil out, mixing it with compost and putting it back in. But if
Mhm.
there's another method you'd recommend for folks dealing with clay soil and compaction.
That is such a good question. And frustratingly, not only do we have some areas of very clayey soil, but at my house, I have like clay sand. So it seems like in Aurora, most people either have pretty heavy clay or sand. And it can happen in the same neighborhood. My neighbor across the street, so they are 50 feet away, 60 feet away. They have clay and I have clay sand. So I feel your pain. Clay is, our soils are not the most nutritious out here on the Front Range. And my understanding is that it's because our native environment is short and medium grass prairie. And it's so dry that those are pretty much the plants that would grow. And grasses, over hundreds of years, they're not building up a lot of organic matter. It's not like an old growth forest or forest where you have like feet of organic matter. There's just not a lot of nutrition there. And so we have generally lean soils either way. When you're talking about clay soils, you're absolutely right. The water moves through clay soil very slowly because the pore space is very small. Clay particles are tiny, and so the pore space between them is even smaller. Sandy soils, on the other hand, are the opposite. Sandy particles are very large, and there's very large pore space between the grains of sand. So water and nutrients move very quickly through sandy soils and very slowly through clayey soils. But wonderfully, the remedy that I always tell people for both is adding organic matter. Organic matter as it gets mixed in, and I know that Sister Ote is teaching y'all the no-till method. which I am not actually familiar with at all. I teach the yay tilling method, but everyone's got their different ways of doing things. So I recommend that people mix in compost, whether you have clayey or sandy, and you want to mix in compost every year. In a clayey soil, the compost actually creates more pore space. It chops up the clay and it creates pore space so that water nutrients can move a little bit more freely through that hard, heavy clay. And then in sandy soil, the compost creates water retention ability because the organic material can soak up water that's the sandiness and whatever is in the sand also it cannot soak up. So it kind of is creating magic in the soil. And then of course it adds nutrients as well, either way. So I hope that answers your question. It's really, for me, it's all about compost. Although other folks will also talk about different soil amendments for clayey soil that can add additional pore space. There are lots of different opinions out there about which soil amendment, but I'm talking about like pea gravel, expanded shale, other kinds of non-organic material that you can mix in to increase pore space. I have not done that personally in a vegetable garden. So I don't know how that works. So I can't give you my personal take on that. My personal take is compost is almost always the answer. Thanks for your question. It looks like I got another question.
Cisco. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can you see it? Mm-hmm.
If the mulch is colored, does that impact its usability? So Cisco, do you mean like colorful newspaper, like the mulch examples I was given before, or are you talking about wood chip mulch that's dyed?
Yeah, just like the generic wood mulch that you would get somewhere that has color in it.
Yeah, great question. No, it doesn't. I mean, again, don't use it for your vegetable garden because it's wood that decomposes very slowly. But for your perennial beds, any mulch is good mulch. It all works the same. It's really just comes down to your personal aesthetic. The free mulch that the city of Aurora gives away, the Aurora Forestry Department, every time they cut down limbs or cut down a tree, they mulch it up, and it's available on like, I don't know, a half dozen days throughout the summer, maybe more than 6 days throughout the summer. They're called freeloader days, which I think is hilarious. Because they do have, like, you can take a pickup or you can take whatever containers you have, but generally speaking, people will take pickups, and then there is the front loader that will dump it into your pickup. It's ugly stuff, and sometimes it'll have little bits of plastic in there. Sometimes there's a lot of Christmas trees get mulched, so sometimes there's some old tinsel or other junk, and it's ugly, but it works. So any mulch is good. I recommend the free stuff.
I would like to add a caveat to the response to Cisco. If you're look for the code, I'm going to give you letters OMRI. And you all will learn more about that as we move. So basically, Danny, they've been having speakers, they haven't really gotten a lot of gardening content as they move through the process. So they are not familiar with some of the things that you've mentioned for me. But in regards to the question around the colored mulch, what you want to look at, any store-bought, I'm going to tell you, that's what you're going to learn from me, is you're going to look for OMRI means it is organically certified. So, because I believe with the color, people are concerned, is the dye going to be harmful? So it is OMRI, the type of dye that they, look at that. Thank you. Look at May, that girl. She's so good. The dyes that they use are organic things. That's the only caveat I wanted to give around that too. If you were concerned about chemicals around the dyes. That's
awesome. I've never heard of that. So I'm learning something new today too. So thank you.
Love life. Look, and so you see, Malia dropped in the chat a link to the OMRI. They have quite a few products, and you'll hear a lot more about that. That link might be in your syllabus. If it's not, it will be.
Right.
But we can only use organic products for Doug Gardens. Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Any more
Yeah.
questions? So we don't want to hold you just because we do we use mulch for both flowers? Uh-oh, good question. Let me stop talking.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mulch is the best. It's
Would you
the
be
answers
trained?
are either compost or mulch
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
world. So
yeah.
absolutely, your flowers, your perennial flower beds, or I know that at Montview Park there's beautiful trees as well. Everything should get some kind of mulch because of all the benefits that I listed for the vegetable gardens. But for your perennials where you're not tilling or disturbing the soil regularly, wood mulch or rock mulch is better because of the longevity of it.
Get
Good
that
question.
That was a good one. So what you'll see when you all come over to Montview Park for the community plots that I just finished mulching all of the community plots on yesterday, you'll see that there's no soil showing. There's no soil, right? So Diana gave us some numbers, and you'll see that when you watch the video, a certain depth, it matters, right? So we're not doing, we're smothering weed seed, we're keeping the soil cool, we're maintaining the moisture that's in the ground,
Mhm.
right? And so I'm saying that because I want them to feel encouraged to be generous.
Mhm.
For all of the
Yep.
same benefits that you gave, but be generous with it. I'm going to
That's right.
encourage the Montview gardeners to do that.
Yeah,
We
and
have
it will
straw.
compact a little bit over time with your wood mulch. That's why
Mhm.
starting with 3 inches is good. But yeah, anything is better than nothing. I'll give one real quick personal anecdote about mulch that I wasn't sure if we'd have time for. But I went to a community garden a few years ago. I'll never forget this. There were 2 plots side by side. They're both growing cantaloupe. And the one was mulched with, I think it was straw mulch, and the other one didn't have any mulch. The cantaloupe that had the straw mulch was thriving. It was had happy looking green leaves. The cantaloupe was getting to be normal cantaloupe size, very exciting. The one that didn't have mulch, it was covered in aphids. The green leaves were stunted, and the cantaloupe melon that was growing, I mean, it looked like it was barely hanging on there with this tiny little thing. And so it really does, the temperature difference, the moisture difference is very real. I have seen it, and almost like it looked like an experiment. And it was an awesome to see the difference between the two. And the bug thing is definitely real because bugs will take advantage of sickly plant material.
Thank you. One more question, then we're going to get out of here. We have one more question, please. And then you can always, send me questions. I can forward them to Diana. As maybe after you watch the video with your notes, you may have additional questions. That doesn't look like anybody has anything to say. So this is how we'll close. Thank you again so much. I'm
Thank
going to
you.
send the announcements in your chat. Only thing I wanted to remind you that we do meet again next week. That's kind of different. We're going to go for 90 minutes next week. There is no meeting on Father's Day. It's early for me to tell you that. There are some additional volunteer dates. I'm throwing that out there. It'll be on the recording. You'll get some information in an email. If you could just take a moment as we're closing out, just type in the chat one word about your experience today. Just one word about your experience today. And that's our benediction. That's how we're going to close the call. Informative. Thank you so much. Educated. All right, now here we go. I love this part. That might be everybody that's here. I think Alexis might have been on her phone. I'm gonna say, so I get excited. Reason why I'm really super excited is because I get to start teaching next week. Yes. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about that. So thank you so much, Diana. I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much for being here. And I'm gonna see if there's another opportunity for actually coming to the yard, mainly because I want to show off the mulch, but also so you can, have an opportunity to give us some more tips about some things that we have going in there as well. Talk to you more about that when I speak with you. Okay, we're hanging out. Okay. Oh, that was me excited. All right. Adios. Goodbye. See you all later.